Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the weekly Tottenham news review. I am Lee the Dorset Spur and I'm here to talk about all the stories making the headlines over the last 7 days. Kind of give you my view, my outlook on those. Feel free to obviously counter those, put some comments in, let me know what you're thinking, let me know if you think the same way I do, whether I've got it totally or wrong, whatever. It's always interesting to get everybody else's opinions, because of course football is all about opinions as always. Of course we do have a massive game coming up, not tonight, but we do have a massive game coming up on Wednesday. So ahead of that, the big news, I guess, is the injury to Kulusevski. Massive blow in my opinion. Really disappointing, I guess, for him as well, considering that he was definite starter for the game, because he is probably the only player that we had available who you kind of put forward as your creative leader, the person who could kind of make something magical happen, pick the right sort of pass or make the right turn that kind of opens up the space or whatever. So hugely disappointing. Initially it was called out as a knock. Ange said it doesn't look too bad, taken off precautionary, but of course it turns out that he has a bad knock. He's had to have an operation and he's going to be out for several months. So on top of Bergvall getting injured in training and Maddison getting injured in the semi-final of the Europa League, we also now have Dejan Kulusevski out. So the big question, the one that's being debated across all social media, has been about where do we go from here? What do we do now? You know, who's going to play in that role? And essentially, we kind of midfield really kind of makes itself. Sarr is available, Bentancur is available, Bissouma is available currently, touch wood. And so it kind of lends itself to the fact that those three will probably play. And I guess the big call out is, where's the creativity coming from? Well, unfortunately, I don't think there is going to be a creative player in that midfield. Bentancur probably plays a little bit further forward, maybe has the opportunity to kind of support, I don't know. Bissouma, his kind of performances over this year have not been great. He's not been the player that we expected, and so it's a big ask to ask him to kind of all of a sudden just really turn it on. I think over the last couple of games he has improved and put a little bit more into it, but in terms of being the main man who's going to step up and make a difference, I'm not sure that's quite on the cards from him. But listen, I guess the positive about this is that Manchester United are not going to be sitting deep. They're not going to be doing a low block. They are going to be coming at us. So realistically, is it more important to have that still and that determination in midfield rather than that creativity? The creativity potentially comes from Porro putting crosses in, comes from the left hand side or the right hand side. Is that where we're gonna win it? I guess the sturdiness in midfield and in defence is the key for us. It's what's kind of got us this far in the end, because obviously we had really strong performances against Bodo away, which they said we couldn't do. We couldn't get away with not letting a goal in, which we did. And of course everyone was writing us off at Frankfurt, going to Frankfurt to win. So by being a little bit more steely and a little bit stronger defensively, we have managed to get this far. So potentially that's the answer, isn't it? That we end up going along those lines and hoping for a little bit of magic from someone like Porro, who can put the ball in. When you've got Richarlison likely to play and Solanke, both can head the ball, both can get up high. That kind of does give you that hope that something from maybe him or Richarlison putting it in from the left-hand side. Maybe that's what kind of gives us that, you know, that edge overall, and a little bit more steel and determination in midfield is what we need, rather than someone like Maddison who can and has kind of disappeared in games. So you have to stay relatively optimistic that you know that we can still do something. We will have potentially Sonny back. I know he's played last week, and potentially starts or plays some minutes against Villa to get his match sharpness back. So potentially you've got him coming on at some point, or starting at some point. Maybe he can be the catalyst that creates that little bit of magic. So big loss. Dejan Kulusevski being out, one that we really didn't want, one we didn't really need. But it is what it is. And I guess all those people calling out that really, why is he playing in a meaningless game against Crystal Palace? I guess the thing you've got to work out from that is, you know, the guy's coming back from an injury. He hasn't been setting the world on fire. He needs those minutes, and he needs those minutes to give him that confidence and that sharpness back into his game, which, to be honest with you, he wasn't really showing so far. So is he a massive loss? Potentially, yeah. But on the evidence, you suggest, well, he wasn't really firing on all cylinders anyway, so we can't really rely that was going to be the answer. So it's one of them. You kind of have to be a little bit positive in those situations, and look at it with a glass half full scenario rather than a glass half empty, I guess. So kind of moving back slightly to that loss against Crystal Palace. If you were watching Chris's channel after the match, you'll know that I was on his Spurs chat podcast straight after, and it wasn't brilliant. It was a pretty negative place to be. Really difficult. That's 20 games beaten in the season. Worst that we've ever had, and really difficult to take. And I guess the key point about all of this is, and we said it on the chat, if you were to say to the fans at the beginning of the season, would you take a 17th finish and win the Europa League? I guess the vast majority would say, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take that, because obviously we want to win silverware. It's something that we really need. The difficult part of it is when you're going through that set of results that brings you to 17th in the league. That's the real difficult bit to swallow. So you can say, yeah, I'll have it, but if you've had to watch all the games, travel to the games, whatever it is, that makes that a lot harder to take. But the Crystal Palace performance was poor, really disappointingly. And I think you could tell by Ange Postecoglou's comments after the game about players not taking their opportunity and so on. I get it, you know, you want them to be going, well, look, let's give the manager something to consider. Let's give him something to think about, even though he's probably got a good idea about who plays. You never know what's going to happen. Like I say, Kulu's now injured, so someone like Tell or Odebear could find himself in contention for a starting place. Now, if you play well enough and you put the effort in and so on, you could play yourself into the reckoning, given that scenario. Don't think the players did that though. Really disappointed with them. To be honest. But it's difficult when you're chucking 8 players in together who are not necessarily always playing together. That's a tough ask. I think the back 4 really should be doing better, considering they have played several games together, but 3 in a row, I think, in the league where they could have started to build a relationship. So disappointing around that. But you know, on the day, Crystal Palace and certainly Eze were clinical. They did what they needed to do, and it could have been 5 or 6 in the end if it wasn't for VAR with some really tight offside decisions and some kind of mad handball scenario that kind of really saved us in the end. So yeah, really disappointing point of view from that. But yeah, okay. So in other news, of course, we do have the final coming up on Wednesday, and it seems that the club have listened to the Tottenham Hotspur Trust, because they are now going to put screens on the pitch. Maybe not to the quality they had for the Champions League final, but they have managed to source something to kind of appease the fans and open the stadium up even further. I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move for the club, because of course they're selling tickets for that. It's not free. There will be people buying food. There will be people buying drinks and so on. So it's still the opportunity for a bit of a money spinner for the club. So it would be stupid not to do that. From a safety point of view, it makes far more sense than people kind of sitting on the edge trying to look at just the big jumbo screens or whatever. I know they are massive, but depending on where you're sitting, they are sat. You're either looking right at the other end of the pitch, or you're looking from the side, or you kind of got your back to the pitch and you're looking up behind you, sort of thing. You can kind of imagine a lot of that going on, and that not being particularly safe or comfortable for those people going to that screening. On my channel, there is a video by one of my subscribers who actually went to a free screening and put a little video up showing exactly what you kind of get from that. But now that they've put the screens on the pitch, it potentially is a little bit better than what he saw himself or went through himself. But feel free to kind of check that out and have a look. Okay, so onto the match tonight. Of course, we have Villa. It's a nothing game for us, but a big game for Villa. Gives them the opportunity to grab Champions League football, I believe. And so the big question around that is, does Son play or not? A lot of fans saying, wrap him up in cotton wool, don't let him play, blah, blah, blah. But it's a difficult one because, again, coming back from injury, he's literally only had, the minutes he had against Palace. It's just not enough to give him confidence that he can really do something. Match fitness and so on. So I think he definitely has to play a part in it. And Postecoglou has said that he will play, at least a half, whether he starts or whether he comes on. It's they'll determine that closer to the time. For me, I always feel like you should start, because you get that full warm up at the beginning of the game rather than sitting on a bench and waiting and then having a little bit of a run around sort of 10 minutes before you go on. I like to see him have like a full proper warm up and that sort of stuff with the medical team around, just to make sure that they are doing the right thing. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays. It will be the same old story with a lot of changes, for sure. A lot of the fringe players and so on. I don't see that we'll end up putting youth players on. I don't think there's any point in that, especially when you've got other players that probably still need the minutes and so on, to kind of get that sharpness just in case they're called upon. And I'm thinking about Odegaard, I'm thinking about Tell, who will probably both end up having to play. Spence is another one I think, will probably play a part in the final, deserves to. So I think it's important that those players still get that opportunity to carry on and to try to get something out of the match. In terms of winning, I don't see us winning. It's difficult to say. No one ever wants to call out their team as a team that's going to lose a match, but I think most of us have given up on kind of getting anything out of this season. So to win the game would be an absolute shock. To be fair, of course, love to see it. I'd love it if we did win, and if that does anything in terms of our league position to make it a little bit more acceptable. I get that, but I'm not expecting it. So it would, potentially we're looking at 21 league losses out of a 37 game season, which is absolutely appalling. And and is why Ange Postecoglou is under so much pressure, because he's just, the league form has just been horrendous, absolutely horrendous and disappointing. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. I'd be surprised if there was an uproar after the game if we lose it, because I think, you know, the players, the fans will be expecting it. I think a lot will be determined on the manner of the defeat again. So yeah, it was very difficult one, and a shame really that we've got this game just before a final. They're really chalk and cheese this season, isn't it? So moving on, other news. Of course, big news. Although we knew this was coming and was expecting it certainly last season and earlier on, before the end of last weekend. But Harry Kane, one of our own, finally picks up a championship trophy, winning the Bundesliga. Fantastic for him. He's gone over there. He's done fantastically well. He's broken all sorts of records with his scoring and his assisting. No less than we would expect from him, because I think he's a terrific footballer who deserves so much more praise and so much more respect than he gets. And basically, that's because of his association with Tottenham, and that he gets so much poor press and negativity around from other fans. It's a shame really that fans can't be less partisan when it comes to looking at players. You know, you can be partisan during a game and all that sort of stuff, but you have to be realistic and honest about players. It'd be like me sitting here saying Cole Palmer is overrated and things like that, when I think to myself, you know, Cole Palmer has had a great season. He's a very good footballer. I can't stand the fact that he plays for Chelsea, but that is what it is, and you should still be able to have a respect for what a player is able to achieve and so on. But of course, people will call out, it's not in the Premier League, it's not a major trophy, blah blah blah, which is laughable when you consider every time an old player for Tottenham wins a trophy, all the fans come out with how many players have won trophies since they've left Tottenham, and they include things like the Mexican League and you know, the Portuguese League or the Dutch League or whatever it might be, and call it out as, oh look, they won a trophy, ha ha ha. You know, Gareth Bale winning trophies in America, they win a trophy, blah blah blah. But then if you were to say, oh yeah, but you know, they won, so and so won this trophy, that trophy, they go, yeah, but it's only this or it's only that. It's just double standards and pathetic. You know, there are other players that are out there who are world class who haven't won the Premier League. You know, and Harry Kane's career is far from finished. So it'll be interesting to see what else he does, and what else he picks up in the meantime. But fantastic news for him. I'm so pleased that he's finally got that monkey off his back, and he can, at least when he does retire, be able to say, yeah, well, I did win trophies. I did win something somewhere, and that'll be good enough. And people will forget about the trophies in years gone by anyway, because, you know, if you look back at, you know, even, and I've said this before, if you look at Alan Shearer won the Premier League. He won one Premier League. That's it. That's all he won. He's never considered Alan Shearer the Premier League winner. He's always considered Alan Shearer the Premier League goal scoring record holder. So, you know, you've got to be careful around that. And there was players out there that have won, you know, medals and so on, that are, you know, would you consider Micah Richards a legend? You know, no, not really. You know, there's players out there that have these team medals that don't really deserve, and doesn't make them a legend. What makes them a legend is of how they play and what they contribute and so on. And Harry Kane would have a bundle of medals had he not played for Tottenham. If he'd have gone to Man City or somewhere like that, he'd have had a bunch of medals, for sure. But yeah, that is what it is. The other thing that comes out of that, of course, that we have forgotten about a little bit, is Eric Dyer. So Eric Dyer was also at Bayern Munich, and has also picked up the Bundesliga Champions medal. Considering how badly he was kind of treated at Tottenham, and how he was called out as a donkey and useless and all the rest of it, but has managed to foul upwards, end up in the Bundesliga, picking up a championship medal as well. He was over the moon to have won it with Harry as well, which means an awful lot. So really, really pleased for him also. And the fact now is at the end of his contract, he now signs for Monaco in France. So, you know, it's not a bad life, is it, when you can foul so dramatically that you end up playing for, you know, some great, you know, teams with some big history. You know, somewhere like Monaco. Fantastic to have it on your CV, having played in Portugal as well. You know, fair play to Eric Dyer. He's living his best life and has shown the critics to be wrong yet again. Yeah, Dave the plumber down the pub. Your detail of how good Eric Dyer is or isn't doesn't really matter anymore, mate, does it? So there you go. So great for him. Great for him to kind of move on and get himself into something as good as that. So yeah, two Tottenham players picking up a championship medal in Germany, and I believe that Matthias Tell also gets a medal as well for his time in Bayern's team and his contribution as well. That may not be right, but that's kind of what I read somewhere. So really fair play to him as well if that's the case. While we're talking about medals, I guess the one other thing I did want to touch on is the interview with Heung-min Son this week, where he has kind of expressed his desire to be to get that final piece in the puzzle that means that he can win a trophy at Tottenham. It's one of the reasons why he has stayed for so long. He said that, you know, he wants to be, you know, to succeed where others have failed. He's wanted to stay to be that person, and you have to respect that. You know, again, he's another player who's had a fair bit of criticism this season. He's by his standards, he hasn't been up to the levels that we've expected from him. But of course, we've seen that he has been under some injury issues, which hopefully is now resolved. We know he's been playing with an injury, so hopefully, if that's resolved, maybe he can still get back to the levels that he deserves. The other story that's come out this week as well is around him being reporting a blackmail attempt against him, which, you know, whatever you go through, if it can't be easy having stuff like that going on in the background. It's the sort of thing that we don't really take a lot of notice of as fans. We don't think about, you know, the personal life and the personal problems, you know, these individuals go through. And we could talk about their money. Oh, you get paid enough. But money doesn't come into it when you're thinking about your own mental health or your own, you know, problems that you go through. You can have all the money in the world and still be depressed. You can have all the money in the world and still have problems at home and everything. Kind of remind me a little bit. There was a story about Paul Scholes, and I didn't know this, but Paul Scholes has a son with learning disabilities, and that's challenging. It's challenging, and he said that it's challenging. And it's kind of amazing. You don't think about these guys going through stuff like that, having to deal with, you know, trauma and drama and issues, you know, family problems and stuff like that. You just want them to go out on the pitch and be this fantastic player who always delivers. Some people can, some people can't. Some people suffer with dealing with problems like that. Fortunately for Man United, Paul Scholes wasn't one of them. He was able to deal with it and work through and so on. But, you know, you don't think about them going through some of this stuff that we go through. You know, normal Joe Soap, you know, that's got a disabled child or loses a child, or, you know, all those kind of things, has financial worries, you know, all that kind of stuff. These guys, you know, they are people. They go through this stuff all the time, and it's one of the one of the things that Ange Postecoglou impressed me with was his empathy when talking about, you know, Richarlison's mental state and the fact that he was going through some difficult times and stuff. So, you know, that's what I respected about him as a man, rather than maybe as a coach, but as a man, I liked that. So yeah, so that kind of brings me up to date. I think the final, I guess, bit that I just wanted to pick up on, which I kind of found really strange and interesting, is it's obviously come out over the last couple of days that Timo Werner is actually injured, suffering with a hamstring injury, which is, you know, is crazy to think, because the guy came out injured with a hamstring injury, recovered from injury, hasn't played, but still managed to get another hamstring injury, which kind of just really sums up the season that Tottenham have had. I'm not the biggest fan of Timo Werner. I'm sure he's a really nice guy and deserves all the luck in the world, and I'm sure he'll move on to bigger and better things and inevitably win some kind of medal somewhere to finish his career and so on. But it is crazy to think that, you know, someone who's injured coming back still picks up another injury just in training. And people will say, oh yeah, it's because of the way Ange trains them and so on. I don't think that's the case. I think ultimately this season, given the amount of injuries we've had, he's never been able to really train the players in the way that maybe people think he does. I think you have to be very careful when you've got that many injuries to manage the players that you've got and so on, and not injure those as well, and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's just an interesting one, isn't it? But of course, it is what it is. But then, of course, there we are. That's the end of this kind of roundup. All I want to leave it with is to say what a great opportunity that Tottenham have to end this season on a massive high. If we can just do enough to win that trophy, I do feel that we have the players who can do it. I do feel we could do it this time. Everything seems to be going against us every single day, and it's out of that adversity you could end up with some kind of success, and it would be fantastic to see. But anyway, listen, I'm going to leave it there. Please do hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video. Please do comment as well and let us know what your views are on these topics or any other topics, or if there's any other topics you'd like me to talk about. I'll be interested to see that. If you don't subscribe to Chris's channel, please do hit the subscribe button. Puts out an awful lot of content, really good stuff that keeps you up to date with everything that's going on. Talk shows and 60-second updates and tours of stadiums and so on and so forth. It's the place to be, and Chris is your man. So thanks for watching again. I really appreciate the support, and as always, up the Spurs.